my God! Come on! Yeah, sucker! Whoa, whoa!
Pickle Wheat has spent a lifetime navigating the treacherous swamps, chasing gators and living the daily grind of swamp life. But even he, with decades of experience, was unprepared for what lay hidden beneath his own dock. A routine check of the waters turned into a discovery so shocking that it left him, and everyone around him questioning reality. The swamp is full of secrets, some dangerous, some bizarre, and some that defy explanation altogether. For years, Pickle and his crew have dealt with shifting waters, wildlife, and the unpredictability of the environment, but nothing had prepared them for this. It wasn't just an animal encounter or a snag in the mud. It was something far more extraordinary. When the discovery came to light, reactions ranged from disbelief to awe. Locals, crew members, and even veteran swamp hunters were stunned by the scale and mystery of what had been hidden in plain sight. Rumors spread quickly, fueling speculation about the history, the danger, and the implications of the find. This documentary dives deep into the moment. Pickle Wheat uncovered the unimaginable beneath his dock. From the initial shock to the unfolding investigation and the reactions of those who witnessed it. It's a story of the swamp's secrets, resilience, and the unexpected mysteries that lurk just beneath the surface. For Pickle Wheat, mornings in the swamp usually followed a familiar rhythm. The air was thick, the water slow-moving, and the sounds of wildlife constant but predictable. Years of experience had taught him how to read subtle changes, a ripple that didn't belong, a silence that felt wrong, or movement beneath the surface that hinted at danger. That morning began no differently. Until something beneath the dock refused to make sense. It started as a routine inspection. Pickle noticed unusual resistance in the water, as if something large and immovable had settled directly beneath the structure. At first, he assumed it was debris, a sunken log or tangled roots pulled loose by recent storms. But the more he observed, the clearer it became that this wasn't natural driftwood or ordinary swamp clutter. The water around the dock behaved strangely. Instead of flowing freely, it swirled and pulled inward, creating an unnatural pattern that caught Pickle's attention immediately. For someone who had spent years navigating these waters, the movement felt wrong. Instinct told him to be cautious. As he probed deeper using tools normally meant for checking lines and structures, he struck something solid. The sound wasn't hollow like wood or dull like mud. It was dense, heavy, unyielding. That single moment shifted the tone from curiosity to concern. Nearby, crew members were called over, each offering their own theory. Some suspected an old abandoned structure long forgotten by time. Others worried it could be something far more dangerous, something living, resting, and very much capable of moving if disturbed. The swamp has a way of hiding threats until the last possible moment. As they worked to get a clearer look, the water began releasing air pockets, sending bubbles racing to the surface. The smell changed too, a sharp, metallic scent mixing with stagnant swamp air. That detail alone raised alarms. In the swamp, changes in smell often signal buried history or hidden decay. The dock itself creaked under the shifting pressure. Whatever lay beneath wasn't just nearby, it had been there a long time. Long enough to become part of the environment. Long enough to be forgotten. Pickle's expression reportedly changed from focus to disbelief. He'd seen plenty in his career, massive gators, dangerous sinkholes, sudden collapses, but this felt different. This wasn't a challenge to overcome. It was a mystery demanding answers. Word spread quickly among locals. When you live in the swamp, news travels fast. Neighbors, fellow hunters, and longtime residents arrived with cautious curiosity. Many had grown up hearing stories of what the swamp hides: lost equipment, sunken boats, even remnants of structures erased by time. But none expected something of this scale beneath a working dock. Speculation took over. Some whispered about long-abandoned operations. Others suggested the dock had unknowingly been built over something never meant to be disturbed. The longer the object resisted identification, the more unsettling the atmosphere became. What made the situation even more unnerving was how silent the swamp grew. Birds disappeared. Insects quieted. The water stilled. To those who knew the land, that silence spoke louder than any warning. Pickle made the call to stop digging further without proper precautions. Whatever they had uncovered wasn't going anywhere, and rushing could make things worse. The discovery beneath the dock had already crossed from strange into unsettling. What began as a simple morning had now become something far bigger, a discovery that challenged everything. Pickle thought he knew about the land he trusted. And this was only the beginning. Once the initial shock settled, the focus shifted from speculation to careful examination. Picklewheat understood that whatever lay beneath the dock had remained hidden for years, possibly decades. Disturbing it without understanding its nature could be dangerous, not just for the dock, but for anyone nearby. The swamp doesn't forgive careless decisions. With controlled movements, the crew began clearing away layers of mud and plant matter. As visibility improved, the outline beneath the waterline became clearer and more alarming. This wasn't a random object washed in by storms. It had shape, structure, intent. The realization sent a wave of unease through everyone present. What emerged was far larger than expected. Thick, hardened surfaces suggested something man-made, yet time and water had fused it seamlessly into the swamp floor. Nature had claimed it, disguising it as part of the landscape. That alone raised troubling questions. How long had it been there? And why had no one noticed until now? As more of it was revealed, the dock's placement suddenly made sense, and that realization was unsettling. The structure hadn't been built over open water. It had been unknowingly constructed atop something already there. The dock wasn't just standing above the swamp. It was resting on a buried secret. Local elders who arrived at the scene began sharing fragmented memories. Stories passed down through generations spoke of abandoned operations, mysterious disappearances, and projects halted without explanation. At the time, they were dismissed as swamp legends. Now, standing over a physical reminder of something forgotten, those stories carried new weight. The water continued releasing trapped air, creating low rumbling sounds beneath the surface. Each release felt like the swamp exhaling, as if disturbed from a long sleep. For seasoned hunters and swamp workers, that sensation triggered instinctive caution. Concerns grew about structural safety. If the object shifted, the dock could collapse. If it broke apart, it could release contaminants long sealed away. The swamp's ecosystem is delicate, and even small disturbances can ripple outward with lasting consequences. Pickle made the decision to halt further exposure and contact local authorities familiar with swamp terrain. This wasn't about curiosity anymore, it was about safety, history, and responsibility. The find had crossed into territory that demanded professional oversight. As officials arrived, the area was quietly secured. No announcements were made. No dramatic claims were issued. But the tension was unmistakable. When professionals stop talking and start observing, it's rarely a good sign. What struck many observers was how easily the discovery could have gone unnoticed forever. Had the dock not required inspection that day, the secret beneath it might have remained buried indefinitely. The swamp had done its job well, concealing its past beneath layers of mud and silence. That realization left Pickle unsettled. He had lived and worked on this land, trusting it daily. To discover that something so significant had been hiding beneath his feet forced him to reevaluate what he thought he knew about the swamp. The discovery was no longer just about what was found. It was about what it represented. A reminder that the swamp remembers everything even when people forget. And sometimes it chooses when to reveal the truth. As the sun dipped lower and shadows stretched across the water, one thing was clear. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the beginning of a deeper uncovering, one that would connect past decisions, buried history, and consequences that could no longer stay hidden. As word of the discovery spread quietly through the community, the atmosphere around Picklewheat's dock began to change. What was once familiar ground now felt uncertain, almost watchful. Longtime swamp residents started revisiting old memories, details they had dismissed or forgotten because there was never proof. Until now, elders spoke of activity in the area decades earlier, not openly but in fragments. Heavy equipment moving through the swamp late at night. Sections of water temporarily blocked off, then just as suddenly, everything stopped. No explanations. No records. The swamp swallowed the evidence and life moved on. What lay beneath the dock seemed to align with those stories. The size, the placement, and the way it had been deliberately concealed suggested intention. This wasn't an accident of nature. Someone had put it there and had gone to great lengths to make sure it stayed hidden. Experts familiar with swamp terrain explained that burying something this large wouldn't have been easy. It would have required planning, manpower, and urgency. The swamp resists interference. Anything placed there wants to resurface unless forced down and anchored. That meant this object was meant to disappear. The dock itself now took on a new meaning. Built unknowingly over a concealed structure, it had acted like a lid, holding the secret in place. Over time, layers of silt and plant life sealed everything together. Nature had finished what humans started. Pickle listened as officials discussed possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Abandoned infrastructure, illegal operations, equipment deliberately left behind to avoid attention. Every theory raised the same question. Why was it never removed? The swamp offered its own response. Wildlife behavior around the dock had changed over the years, subtle enough to ignore until now. Gators avoided the area. Fish patterns shifted. Certain plants refused to grow near the structure. These signs had always been there, quietly marking a disturbance below the surface. Pickle realized he hadn't just discovered something physical. He had uncovered a story the land had been trying to tell. The swamp communicates differently. It doesn't announce. It waits. There was also a growing concern about what prolonged exposure could bring. Objects buried for decades don't stay inert forever. Corrosion, pressure, and shifting soil eventually force change. The discovery may not have happened by chance. It may have been inevitable. As daylight faded, the mood grew heavier. Flashlights scanned the water's surface, reflecting distorted shapes below. Every ripple felt amplified. The dock, once a place of routine, now felt like the edge of something unresolved. Pickle faced a difficult reality. Whatever happened next was out of his hands. The discovery had moved beyond personal curiosity and into shared responsibility. History, safety, and environmental impact were now intertwined. What disturbed him most wasn't what had been found, it was what it implied. That the swamp holds more than wildlife and tradition. It holds secrets people tried to erase. And when the time is right, it gives them back. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the moment everything began connecting. And what came next would determine whether the truth stayed buried, or finally surfaced for good. As the investigation moved forward. The area around Pickleweed's dock was no longer just a worksite. It had become a boundary between past and present. What had been uncovered could not be ignored, covered up, or quietly dismissed. The swamp, after decades of silence, had forced a reckoning. Officials approached the situation with caution, understanding that disturbing something long buried can trigger consequences no one anticipates. Specialized equipment was brought in, not to remove the object immediately, but to assess stability and environmental risk. The goal was no longer discovery, it was containment. As more details emerged, the significance of the find became clearer. The structure beneath the dock was confirmed to be deliberately placed, not naturally formed. Its conditions suggested long-term submersion and intentional concealment. Whatever its original purpose, it had been meant to vanish. The realization sent a chill through the community. This wasn't just a relic. It was evidence of decisions made in secrecy, of actions taken under cover of isolation and silence. The swamp had preserved it, waiting for the moment when pressure, time, and circumstance aligned. Pickle watched as professionals discussed next steps, feeling a mix of disbelief and responsibility. The land he worked on daily had carried a burden long before he arrived. Now, through no choice of his own, he was part of its exposure. Environmental assessments revealed why the area had behaved strangely for years. Subtle contamination patterns, soil compression, and disrupted water flow all traced back to what lay beneath the dock. The swamp had been signaling distress in the only ways it could. What struck many observers was how close this secret came to remaining hidden forever. One missed inspection, one ignored sign, and the truth would have stayed buried. That realization changed how people viewed the swamp, not as an empty wilderness, but as a living archive. There was no dramatic removal that day. No spectacle. Just measured decisions and quiet acknowledgement of what had been found. Some truths aren't meant for headlines. They're meant for correction. Pickle returned to the dock with a new awareness. It was no longer just a platform over water. It was a reminder of how little control people truly have over land shaped by time and memory. The swamp had done what it always does. It kept the secret until it could no longer hold it. When the moment came, it revealed just enough to demand attention, and no more dot in the end. The discovery wasn't about shock value. It was about respect. Respect for the land, for the past, and for the responsibility that comes with uncovering what was meant to stay hidden, what they discovered under. Pickleweed's dock wasn't just unbelievable, it was a warning. In the swamp, nothing truly disappears. It only waits.